I want to work on the skirt whilst it's in the flat with applying the applique. So I want to do that before that. So let's have a look and see how, I'm trying to have a look and see how the double, I want to see how long the hem is. Okay, it doesn't say in the instructions how much the hem is. So I'm going to show you how to evaluate how long you want your hem to be. So bearing in mind you're going to lose at least 1 centimetre up the top for your seam allowance. So, and we knew that the bodice came about in line with the top of the bloomers. So I've just set in my fabric about 1 centimetre above the bloomers. What I've then done now is that the fabric is hitting the bottom of her toes, look, right at the bottom of her toes, which is too long. So what I've done is I've just measured 2 inches up, and if I fold that fabric back for you, you will see that that will give us a hem that will then show off the bottom of her bloomers under her skirt. So I'm happy with that. If you want your dress to be shorter, you can take it up a larger hem. If you want your dress to be to the ground, then leave a smaller hem, and the effect will be the same. But what I'm going to do now is, now that I've decided that, is I am going to take my fabric. I've marked my right side of my fabric, so I'm going to put my right side down onto my board here. I'm going to measure up 2 inches on my fabric. And to do this, you can also put pins in as well once you've got it set up correctly. So that's just a little bit too much. So we're going to press in this 2-inch seam. Now a 2-inch hem will give a nice weight to the hem that will hold the skirt down and give it a lovely, luxurious full finish. So don't worry that it's going to be too thick, because we're going to work with that. So just go along, put your pins in just to hold your hem in place. And that's why these wool pressing mats are very good. But if you've got a fabric cover on your ironing board, you'll be able to do the same. And we're just going to press in that fold for the hem. In the end, I'm going to double fold this so that she'll end up with a 1-inch hem, but it'll be a 1-inch double hem, and that will act a bit like putting a crinoline underneath it. It'll give it that fullness and that strength. So just move along, all the way along your fabric. It's quite a long piece of fabric. Just marking up your 2-inch hem, because that will give you a lovely pressed line that we know not to go below when we're sewing on our applique or our pockets. So you would do this section even if you are not adding applique or you are not adding pockets. You still will need to press your hem up in this way. So let's meet back here once you've done that all the way along the end of your hem. Okay, so I've got my hem marked in here. This will eventually, now if you go ahead and neaten this edge, if you do a double hem, that is where you put the hem to that folded line, your cut edge, and then open it up like that, you could get a ridge where you've got your overlocking stitches through. Also, if you leave it as a single hem like this and you overlock the edges, again, when you press your fabric, you might get an indentation of the overlocking stitches through there. I will probably end up hand sewing my hem, but I just want you to be aware of those consequences if you do go ahead and neaten it at this point. So I personally wouldn't, because I'm just going to fold my hem into there, and then eventually it will go in as one hem like that. But for the moment, I'm going to just leave it as the 2 inches turned up as I need to. What I do want to do is take my skirt and fold it in half. And then on this edge that we haven't pressed, so the waist edge that we haven't pressed, at that halfway point, I want to put a notch. Just do a little snip just in the centre of your fabric, just there, so you'll be able to find it. Then fold your fabric into half again to give us the 1/4 points, and again at that 1/4 point we are just going to put a snip through the fabric as well at that point. Make sure you've got through both sides of your fabric, because that's going to mark the side seams for us. So there I've got my 2 marks, just my 2 snips just there. Okay, so we've done that now. What we're going to do now is we are going to move on to the appliqué. So if you are just going to gather your skirt and attach it, and you don't want any appliqué, any pockets or any patches, you can jump ahead in the video and I'll put a timestamp on here for you as to where you need to jump ahead to. If you're going to be doing the appliqué, carry on watching me now, because we're going to place that first before then we do the pockets. Then we'll do the pockets and then I'll show you how to do the patches. So let's go together on this. So for now we've got the centre part of our dress marked. Let's just pop this piece of fabric just to one side. You'll see how easily mine is all creasing. Just fold that to one side, and you're going to go to the pattern pages in your book where you can find the appliqué for the leaves and the, I think it was, what was it, 106? 102. So here you've got the pattern for your appliqué. So what we're going to do here is, and what I have done is, you can buy something called fusible what's it called? Sometimes it's called not soft and stable. There's a name for it. It's a fusible interface, and you've got a paper backing, but then on the other side, if I just peel this away, can you see that mesh on the back there? That's actually glue. Can you remember the old Wonder Web that you used to do hemming trousers with if you couldn't sew? It's a bit like that, but it's on this paper. And what you can do is you can hold your paper over the top of your lines here, and I've numbered mine, and then you can draw around your template on the paper side of your pieces. So on the paper side only. I put mine quite close together, and I've put all the leaves together. Then I've put all of the shells together, all the little cups together. Which ones are the cups? Those are the cups, I think. So all the cups are together on one. And then all the acorns are together on another. Oh no, those are the cups. Look, those are the cups. And then those are the acorns. So because what we want to do is we need to fuse this onto we don't cut these out individually. We fuse it as one piece onto the fabric, because the glue will stick these templates and this paper onto the fabric, and then we'll cut them round extra after. So you need a little bit of extra room around each piece. Don't put them right up to each other, because that will help you get a good finish. So as you can see, I've numbered them all, so I've got them all, and I've got them a bit of a gap. Same with my leaves, bit of a gap, and same with my cups, a bit of a gap between those. So now I can use my scissors. Get them. Oh, there we go. So, and I'm going to just roughly cut out the leaves. Now I don't cut them out all individually, I'm just cutting them out so that they are roughly together. Let me just cut through here and I'll show you a bit more how we're going to do this. Just take off any of the excess. I do save these little bits because they do come in handy. So again, I'm pretty frugal with my supplies, as you know. So let's get all 5 of the leaves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'll show you how to do it with these, and then you're just going to repeat it the same way with the rest. There's just one thing to remember when you're doing your actual acorns, not the cups, the actual round acorns, and I'll show you that in a second. So we're going to take our piece of fabric for our leaves, which is this piece here that I was going to use. We're going to press it flat first on the wrong side, just to make sure that that's nice and flat and is ready to be used. And then we're going to take our pieces of our template and we're going to pop that onto our fabric. Try and be frugal with your fabric if you can, so that you can save as much as possible. Just be aware that wherever that glue is will stick, so if it's overhanging your fabric, it will glue onto your mat. Then I'm going to use a press cloth again, just pop it over the top, hold everything down, and I'm just going to relatively quickly, just put the heat of the iron over those templates, and that will glue those pieces onto that fabric, just like that, look. So if you blow on that, that's now stuck. That glue has melted, and it's melted the paper onto and the glue onto the fabric. So that's just for that one to put to one side. So let's now get the fabric for our cups and for our acorns. So again, here's my piece of fabric for my cups. Let's just give that a nice press. We've got a nice flat piece to work with. Let's use my cups, which are here. And just roughly cut those out, just around the main pieces. So they're all still together on one piece of paper like that. Put that piece away to save for another day. And then again, just pop that onto my fabric, like so. So making sure not to waste any fabric if I can help it. And then we're going to then just put that on top of there, and the heat of the iron again will just melt that on there. And you've got to leave that to cool. Let's fold it over. Oops, that's hot. So one of my edges of fabric has just folded over, so I'm just going to fold it back, just press it back down again. Okay, so that's 2 done. Now on the acorns, we're going to use this fabric here. Just find a nice little section that we can use. What we want to make sure is when we're going to cut out these acorns, we leave a little bit of extra fabric around them. So let's just pop these on top here. Trim this one off because it's got a little bit too much around it. I don't want to waste the fabric in that way. So that can go on there. And then these ones with the corners, let me just make sure that the backing is going to stay on. Just take off these points. Again, just trying to save fabric where we can. Just make sure your paper doesn't overlap at all. And then once you're ready, put the press cloth down over the top again. And then I'm just going to press those on in place again. Doesn't take much time, it's just a quick amount of setting. Right, so let's let those now cool off. So let's go back to our first one that we did. Let's move my iron out of the way so I don't burn myself on my iron. And using a sharp pair of scissors, we are now going to cut out on the pencil line. So cut out your shapes, keeping as close to the pencil line as you can. The fabric is nice and stiff because it's been stiffened with the glue. I'll just show you one. Just take your time. So just cut around on your pencil edges on each of those 5 leaves that you've got. Oops. A little bit fiddly, but you'll get used to it. And incidentally, just out of curiosity or interest, this is the same technique you use when you're doing wool appliqué. So if anybody's seen the Lovebirds pink cushion that I made, this is exactly the process that you follow first. Let's just take off the bottom of that leaf, and then we're going to cut that triangle out just there. So there we've got our first little oak leaf all cut out. So do the same with all of those. When you come, all of your leaves, when you come to your cups, you can cut those out on the line as well. So cut each of those out on the line too. But when you come to your acorns, where you can tell that you're away from the pointed edge. So if you know that here you've got a pointed edge, haven't you, or a rounded edge there, and that's the bit that goes into the cup. I want you to extend this edge here down a little bit so that you can tuck a little bit underneath the cup when we sew it, when we press it. So just make this bottom, so that whereas you would normally stop on that line, just make that a little bit deeper on that section there so that we can just tuck it behind the cup. It'll all make sense. If you're not sure, just carry on watching the video and then come back to it. So if I do, let's just cut these out for the moment. So number 1 is that one. So let me just rough cut this one, number 1, out without compromising on number 3. So there's my bottom line. And I'm going to cut a couple of millimetres below that bottom line. Still following the same curve, like that. Can you see how I've got a little bit of extra paper on the bottom below the line? Try and do that for as many as you can do. Like on this number 2, I can't because I have gone too close to it. Can I, number 2? Yeah, number 2 is like that, isn't it? So just, I didn't follow my own advice on that one. I was too gung-ho with my tracing. But if I can, even just a small section, then I will just leave a little extra on like that. It'll just help. So cut all of those bits out. If you've got a dish to put them into, that will help you as well so they don't all fly off. Just keep a little dish by the side of you and cut out all of those pieces now so that you've got them there to be able to work with in a few moments. And then I'll come back to you and I'll show you how we'll work on these shapes shortly in order to make them look lovely and look autumnal. Okay, back in it's more than a few minutes while I just cut all of those out, and we'll meet back here. Okay, so once you've got all of your bits cut out, we're then going to go back to our skirt panel. And what I want you to do is let's put some creases in just so that we know where we are. So on the wrong side of your fabric, where you've got your halfway point marked for your side panel, just take your press cloth, put it over the top and just press in a quick crease just to mark that. Then move your fabric along, and then where the halfway line is, let's just quickly press in a line. We can take those lines out again in the end, but we just need them just for sort of placement. Because when we look at this dress, all of this fabric all the way along here is all going to be gathered up into that section there, from there to there. So all of this fabric here is all going to be gathered up and fit in between there. So when we are actually spacing these patterns out, I wanted to know where my halfway point is and then where my quarter points are. Have I got my quarter point? Can I see it? There, no, I haven't marked that one in. Let me just mark that one in a little bit more clearly. Because that will help us then with the placement to get these leaves equal. And in the book, there is a section under the apron dress. I just find it. Where it does tell you here how to, so centre of the fabric is there. It doesn't show you all the way across, so it's just showing, I suppose it's just showing you on the centre panel to the side panels, but this is where you've got to decide how spaced out you want yours to be. If we look to the side panels, there's, shall me show you the picture. All of the 5 acorns and leaves are all before you get to the side seams of the dress. So they're all concentrated in this area here. So let's keep that picture up for us so that we can see. So here's one side panel here. Here's our centre there. And here's the other section here. So we are going to have to just be careful with this. Let's start with the centre one first, shall we? So the centre one is a low one. Let's find which one do we want? Don't know which way round they are. Let's just take one. So on this one, the leaf is to one side like that. So we're just going to try and place these so that they're looking pretty much a similar way. So one leaf there. Let's then put another leaf halfway between there and the side section, and that's going up like that. And then we want another leaf similar but not quite to the side seam. That's too similar to that one. Let's do that one that way around. Okay, so we're just placing at the moment. Here's my other side seam. Can you see most of that? You can, I think. Take you out a little bit further. So then with the next one then, we want to be matching it up high here, but putting it on the other side. So that one can go there. And we can measure these as well to see how far they are. It's about 4 inches from the centre seam. So that one was too close. Let's just move that one out. So about 4 inches from the centre seam. And then the other one is down over here. So let's put that way round. Go that way round so they're facing inwards. So I've got one leaf down at down towards the hem edge, or middle of the bodice really, on that centre fold line just there for the centre front. So that's going to stay just there for the moment. I'm not going to stick any of these down. If you want to, once you're happy with your placement, just put a pin through them in order that they then, I think that one can change with that one. They're sort of mirroring each other. Just put a pin through them if you need to, just to sort of anchor them down. Okay, we haven't taken the backing off these yet. This is all still got the paper backing on the back. We're just going to get placement done first. So then let's have a look at some acorns and cups. So let's turn them over so we can see the numbers, because I want to put together each acorn with its cup. 1, 2. Let's get the colours right. 8, 7, 5, 4, 2, 10. So just go along and just put all these together now. So that's going to be 6. That one's going to be 9, and that one there's going to be 1. Okay, and then let's just say we've got 1, 2, 3. Oh, we haven't got cup number 3. There's cup number 3. 3, 4, 5. We should have 10 of each. That's number 8. Number 9, number 10, number 7. Where's 6 and 5 gone? There's 5. Trying to escape. Now where's number 4 gone? Sorry, number 6 gone. 6. These tiny pieces are very easy to lose, aren't they? I've perhaps thrown it away by mistake. I'll need to make myself another one. But for the time being, we can work on this. So long as we match up the acorn with the cup, then it shouldn't matter whereabouts we put them. So in order to get these right, let's just pop them so that they look as if they belong to each other. And then we can then pop the acorn with the actual dress. So I'm just going to put those on, and your acorn cup should go over the top of your acorn itself, just to keep that. If you need to trim anything down, like that one's a little bit too proud, then just trim it down in order to make it fit. Move that one a little bit over there and that one a little bit further down. And just keep looking, I mean, as long as we've got them roughly in the right place for now, we'll fine tune them in a second or two. So we're just trying to get some placement. So let's do 3 and 4 over here. And you get the gist as to how we are. That's 4, that goes to that one. Putting this together. It is a little bit like a fabric jigsaw. There's no escaping that. It is exactly the same as that. But you're just trying to get things together. And she has got one sort of acorn, the leaf, the acorn cup goes over the top of the leaf. So we're going to build these up together in this way. Once you've got your placement ready, let's work on this one because I think this is easy to see on the camera. We're going to then take out the pin, leaving the other pieces in place. We're going to find an end of a stalk or something, and we're going to fold over the edge of our paper. And you should, if you just go onto an edge, you should be able to peel away the paper, and you should be able to see the sticky edge of the glue on the other side of that paper. So take that over and then just pop that back down again and put your pin back in again. And then working with your acorns one at a time, let's take the backing off the other little acorn, just turn over that corner and you'll be able to peel it off. And it leaves the glue on the back of the fabric for you so that you'll then be able to glue these down with the iron. So the placement now is important. If for some reason your paper hasn't left the glue behind, just be aware of that and you can go back and just stick it back down again with your iron. Okay, once you are happy with where everything is, you are then going to take your press cloth. You are going to very carefully lay it over the top of your work. Take your pin out very carefully, and that's why it's nice to hold it flat. And you take your iron and you hold it over the top. Just keep it in place just for a few seconds, and that will then melt the glue and the glue will then stick onto your fabric. Oh, paper's blown away. Right, so I've got a little thread there. So now, if I can lift that up for you, you can see that that is now glued on and that's now safe and secure. So we're going to go ahead and do that with each of these pieces in turn once you've got them where you want them to be and you're happy with them. I'm very happy with how my leaf is looking at the moment and how my acorns are looking, so they're looking really nice. So now I'll probably work on this centre one again one at a time and peel that, just do exactly the same, peel the backing off, put it into place and then glue it down. And then I'll come back to you when we talk about how we actually then stitch around these in order to hold them in place and to make them permanent and decorate them up a little bit more as well. Just make sure that with these you're just trying to keep these sort of in line with each other in terms of with the hem, and that you're staying on that centre line for your dress, because it will be noticeable if you don't. Okay, I'm going to carry on and stick all of the rest of these down now, and then I'll come back to you once we've done that, and we'll talk about sewing them down. Okay, so last night I managed to get all of my appliquéd pieces fused onto my fabric, as you can see them here, and I'm really pleased with how they are looking. I really do think they look nice. So the next stage now we need to do is we actually need to go over these now with some stitching so that it keeps them on. And the stitch that Claire has used in the book is a blanket stitch, and if we have a look at the actual appliqué in the on the picture, then we will be able to see that we can see those little legs of the stitches, which has just got those little bits on for the blanket stitch. Now, I think that my preference would be to do the blanket stitch by hand, but I've got a feeling that most of you would like to learn how to do it by machine, which is quite easy as well. My only sort of caveat is I think that the acorns will be fairly easy to go round. I think the leaves are going to be much more difficult, because when you are, let me just get a pen and paper for a second, I've got a scrap here, because a blanket stitch goes like this. So you have a stitch there, like that. So that's your blanket stitch. This forms like an outline round your shape, and then these are the stitches that actually go into the fabric to hold the shape down. The problem is that on a machine it goes forward a stitch, back a stitch, and then it makes a leg, and then it goes forward a stitch, 2 stitches, and then makes a leg, and then forward 2 stitches, then comes back and makes a leg, like that. And so you've got to be able to, when you're going round circles and when you're going in between all of these parts on the leaves, you need to be able to have in mind where your stitch is going to go, because if you do a stitch here, it's going to go straight across the leaf, and then you're going to try and turn round the top here, and it might not be as neat as you want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to go round the acorns with the machine, but then I'm going to leave it up to you whether you use those same skills that we learnt on doing the acorns on the leaves. I suspect that I will do my leaves by hand because I'll be able to manipulate the fabric and the stitches much easier. But with the techniques that we learned doing the acorns, you'll be able to apply those and do it by machine if you want to have a go. If I were to do it on the video, it's just going to take so long to try and show you that it will just make the video too long. So let's do an acorn together, and then we'll take it from there. So I've chosen some thread. So I've got this one for my acorn seeds themselves, and then I've got this one here, which is darker. It's still a dark brown. It looks a bit black on the screen, I know, but it is a dark brown. And then I'm going to use that for my shells, the little acorn cups. I have got a green for the leaf, but I think I'll end up using a similar coloured embroidery floss instead. So you need to locate the stitch on your machine. Let me just pop this out of the way for a second. The stitch on your machine that is for your blanket stitch, and on mine it's this one here, number 28, and I'll zoom in on the screen so that I can show you that one. You'll need to do a practice stitch first just to make sure you know which side your legs are going to. So the legs of the stitches are the ones that go out into the fabric, so that you can see which way they're going to go. And perhaps if you draw yourself a shape or a circle and have a go at actually using it and making sure that you can work it through, and that will then hopefully save you some time then when you come to do your actual acorns. But I'm going to show you how to do the acorns and we'll take it from there. I've just got a scrap of this fabric from the skirt, and so first of all let's just use the stitch and put it onto our number stitch, which is number 28, and let's just use the stitch as it is at the moment, just as the settings are, so we can compare that to our shapes and to see whether the size is right or not. So let's just do a little bit to go forward, and it's just I'm just using an ordinary thread here. So let's let's just take that out. That'll give us enough just to have a little look. So I can see that my legs of my stitches are coming across to the left, and that's how my basic stitch looks. Now, because these shapes are so small, I would suggest that we don't need the legs to be quite as long as that, so I can bring that down. And also perhaps the distance in between the stitches can be a bit smaller as well. So my standard setting is a 3.5, so I'm going to take that down to a 2.5 for the legs, and then my standard stitch length is 2.5, and I'm going to take that down to a 2, and let's see how that works. And I would always recommend that you have a little practice just first to see how everything's going, because also you want to make sure there's no skip stitches either. So yeah, that stitch is coming out smaller if I show you those two together. And I think that smaller gauge is slightly better. I think we've still got enough room round the edge for it to be outlining, so I'm not worried about that, but I think those settings are going to be great. If I was finding that underneath on the top I was getting a skipped stitch and I was just getting like a loop where there should be a stitch, it may be that you need to purchase something called tearaway stabilizer, and that's something you can put underneath your fabric, like a backing that doesn't adhere to the garment that you're making, but it gives something for the threads to grip onto a little bit better. You should be all right with quilting cotton if you've used that. It's just if you're using something a little bit more lightweight. Okay, so now we've got our stitch size, let's go and try and see what we can do on our edge. Now what I would suggest that I'm going to do is, where's my pointing tool, is because my stitches go across to the left, I'm going to start round about here and then go around here like that, and then come down and do around this section here. Now because we have, do I need to? I probably don't need to do this section here in the lighter brown thread, because I have tucked my acorns underneath the cup, so that edge is not going to come out. But I will need to go over the top of this section here with my cup, with my dark brown, so that will probably emphasise that. So I'm just going to start here and then go round to there. So let's have a look and see how we get on. So let's line our fabric up. I have just got mine, perhaps I change over to my embroidery presser foot as well, that would probably be better too, won't it? So I'm just taking off my ordinary foot, and in my little pot here I have got a clear plastic foot which looks like this one, which is for embroidery, so it's easier to see through, so let's use that instead, because it is actually an embroidery stitch that we're using. You may or may not have that, don't worry if you've not got it, just use your ordinary foot. So now I've got a little bit more of a space where I can see, and I think I'm on a leg for a stitch. So let me just, yes, I was on a leg for a stitch, so let me just move that so that we're on the straight part of the stitch to start off with. Threads are going to the back. Sorry, I'm making this look very cumbersome, aren't I? Right. Make sure your hem's folded out, because we want to fold that out separately. We want to sew that separately at the end, so we're not sewing through the hem. Okay. So I want to lower my needle down to see where it's going to hit on the stitch. And I can see I need to just move that down slightly across. So we're just on the outline of the acorn. That's fine. I'll put my reading glasses on so I can see a little bit closer as well. Okay. So holding on to the threads at the back, I'm just going to start stitching now. And we're just trying to keep to the outline of the acorn on the edge of the fabric. And we're going to put our needle in our work so that when we finish, we stop with our needle in our work. So I'm just going to twist it slightly. You've got to kind of catch in between your stitches so that you are hugging the edge of the stitch. And so after it comes back to its place, on the main outline section, so let me just show you on my paper. So I'm only changing direction. I'm not changing direction when I'm on a stitch just here on a leg. I'm only changing direction when I've come back here before I take that stitch forward. And that way then you'll be able to change direction to go from straight on to round the corner and start and do your next leg if you wait until you're on that section there, rather than try and do it when you're on a leg, otherwise it won't look right. Just have a little practice, almost do yourself a little acorn first so that you can see first where you are, and then that will help you understand what it is that I'm trying to explain to you. Hopefully I'm doing it fairly well. It's all about trying to get a good finish. And you can just get used to it. It's good for your foot control to see how you get on with getting your foot control right. And the reason why we're going around these acorns now is to actually attach them properly to the fabric, so they don't then sort of come off with wear and tear. But hopefully with the technicalities of working out the stitches, you can see why sometimes it is easier to have a look for a tutorial for how to do a blanket stitch and to do that. Right, there we go. So that's my last stitch. So let me just loosen this thread off. Come on. Doesn't want to let go. That's it. Just have to twist the hand wheel a little bit just sometimes. I'm leaving a long thread because we're going to just secure those stitches off properly. So here's my acorn all stitched down. I'll hold it nice and close so hopefully it'll focus and you can see those stitches on there. So we've got these long threads at the moment. So we're going to go onto the reverse side and we're going to pull on each of those threads. And if you've got a quick unpick, when you pull on the thread, you'll see a little loop appear. And if you put your quick unpick through that little loop, because that's the thread from below coming through, you can pull it through without cutting it off, and then you've got both of your threads on one side and gives a lovely neat finish. Let's do that with the other one as well. So pull on your bottom thread, look for your loop, and then just pull it with the back of your quick unpick, and that will pull it through, and that will give you a lovely finish. And then what we can do on the side, on the inside here, is we can just do a couple of knots and then snip those threads off, just leaving a little tail, and that will sort that through. And indeed we can see those stitches on the back there. Can you see whether you had to go quite close on those stitches to get round the curve as well, perhaps just there? So it's all about technique on that. So I'm going to carry on with I'm going to do the same with the cup as well, and then come across through this section here. So I'll go all the way around there, and I'll show you when I finish doing that, because I want to do all of my acorns first while I've got that colour thread in, and then I'll go back and do all the cups once I've changed thread colour. And then we'll have a look at them at the end, and then I think I will go and do my leaves by hand, because I think that will take longer. But if not, you just use exactly the same technique that we've used for your acorns for your leaves as well, but just getting into those sections and those points will be a little bit tricky, but have a go and just see how you get on, and I'll see you on the other side once we've got these appliquéd on. Okay, so I've just finished putting my stitches into my leaves. If I just show you here, hopefully you can pick up the detail on those leaves now. So the cups have been done all the way round. The acorns in the main have been done just on the outside edge. I do think it gives them a nice amount of dimension. And then I've also gone around the edge of the leaves by hand in blanket stitch, and then I've put some back stitches down the centre to mimic some veins of some leaves and some stitches in the middle there. So I'm hoping the camera is going to pick those up for you just so you can have a look. It's difficult for me to tell from my angle, but that's what I've done on all of those now. The hem is still loose at the moment, and that's correct. We don't want to fix that down just yet. But the next thing that I'm going to work on is the pockets, which I think are probably going to go into this section just here for me. Now, if you're making the dress true to the way that it is in the book for Sapphire, that's the name of the character we're doing, isn't it? Then this, the apron dress for her doesn't have any pockets on it. So there's no pockets on that dress at all. So these pockets mainly are for Elisha, I believe, for Elisha Elephant. Let me just have a look. No, there's no pockets on for Emma's. Emma the Highland cow is just a plain dress. And Alicia's is the one with the pockets on. But I'm going to show you how to make the pockets, and then we'll look at putting those together onto the outfit as well, just so that you've got that and you can have a look and see whether you like that or not. I just think I might change, I'm going to change the pocket slightly. Right, okay, so that's it then for the applique for now. Let's go on to the pockets, then we'll go on to the patches. I won't be adding them onto this dress, but I'll show you how to do those. And then we'll then carry on with the construction of the skirt. So for now, let's just pop this to one side. And if we get our pocket pieces, and what I'm going to do first is just tack those pleats in. So if you get a tacking thread first, where's my tacking thread? It's just here. And we're going to need a needle as well. Never anything nearby when you want it, is there? Okay, so we've got our pockets here. That one hasn't, so that's the centre. So look for your little notches on the top of your pocket and fold it in half so that one notch is in the centre and the other two notches are on top of each other. And then I want you to take a stitch or two or three, depending on how many you want. I'm just going to do a big stitch just like that, because we just want to hold these pockets shut for now. So if I open that up, that's what it looks like. And we're actually going to do a slightly neater finish to the one that Claire did in the book, because that pleat there is going to stay like that. So let me just put so I've got a stitch just there, one big one, and then I'm squidging the pleat back down so that the notch that was just there is now going against the little tacked edge that we did. I'm going to put another stitch or two just in there just to hold that, just with a long tail, and that will just hold it still for us while we're just sewing these pockets up. So that's what it's going to look like once we've got those in. And unfortunately we're going to have to do that on all four of them, because if I'd have thought about this before, we'd have made two pockets just slightly shorter on the top edge, just so that would have worked, made it easier and smoother for us, but I didn't think of that. So that's another one done. And just squidge that pleat so that the notch for the pleat is against the back of the seam that you've just tacked in. And then just do another stitch to hold that in place. So you've got one stitch, well, a couple of stitches to close the pleat upon the front, and then you've got a couple of stitches just to hold that pocket together, that pleat together on the top. I'll do the other two in a minute off camera, so you don't have to wait for ages for me. Now that we've got these together, so now where we can see that pleat, turn them over so that you've got them right sides together, and then we're going to match these up. So you want your pleats on top of each other and your corners on top of each other. And they should be there or thereabouts. There might be a little bit of variation. I think mine's got a little bit of variation, but as long as they're pretty much the same, you should be fine. And then we're going to just go around the outside edge as well and just sort of pin that together to make sure they're pretty much in place as well. I have got a little bit extra, so I'm just going to snip off that extra in order that they match. So just taken off just a slither off mine. We can use the red pin trick again down this side here, because I want to keep a little section open where we can turn these pockets round. So just have a place where you're going to have those pockets together. And if we go to the sewing machine, I've got my yellow thread back in again. And I'm on a straight stitch, and I'm going to stitch with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm going to start it from one side, that's the bit I'm going to leave open just there. And I'm going to stitch all the way around here, across the top, over the top of the pleats. So I might need to help the machine just there because it's quite thick, and then back down, and then I'm going to stop just there again and reverse. Put my proper sewing foot back on again, because I've got my embroidery foot on, haven't I? Right, let's do this. So I'm doing it down the side so it's on a straight edge, which is easier to navigate. So a bit of a reverse back, and then let's needle in the work, and then we can twist around this corner. To the corner, and then we're going to stop, one more stitch, and then we're going to change down, leave the needle in the work, lift up the presser foot and change direction. And now this is where we're going to sew straight across the top here, and all of those pleats. Just make sure that pleat has gone under nicely, and towards the corner again. And then change direction, and then just slightly down this side, and then we're going to just reverse. I'm going to take off our starting and our stopping threads, and that's our pocket. That's how our pocket's looking. So we've got a start here, we've got a little gap just in here, just for turning that round, and then the pleats are on the front and the back. So now, let's do just a couple of things first. Let's trim our corners first. Just take off just slightly more than a 90-degree angle on those, just 45-degree angle on those to help those. And then along the bottom here, if you've got pinking shears, which are these ones here with the triangular blades, then we can just go around this curve, because that will just help this turn out and sit flat once it does. If you don't have the pinking shears, just cut some little triangles out of your fabric like this along the edge. Don't trim on this side here where the opening is, just go really from where it is curved and going around. It doesn't matter whether you use the pinking shears or do those little triangles, it'll still have the same effect, which will be to help that seam just lie nice and flat. So then let's just open this pocket up. Let's push through from the other side. Do tend to find you better if you can push fabric through rather than pull it. Doesn't seem to distort it quite so much. Just take your time with it, try not to yank it too much. Then if we go and get our trusty knitting needle again, or crochet hook or chopstick, whatever you like to use, I'm just going to push out these corners or tease those corners out a little bit. We can just fine tune those with a pin in a minute. And again over here we're going to do the same. Just get the bottom of that corner pocket going nice and neat. A little bit angular on that side. And then we're going to then tuck in 1/4 inch there just to make sure that looks nice and neat. So that's our little pocket. So what I would suggest we do now is, before we take out the tacking threads, let's get our ironing board. And then we're just going to tease out these corners just to make those as sharp as we can do, nice and neat. I'm just here. So a lovely shape to the top of those. Then where we've got the opening, we're just going to have to finger press that for the time being, trying to make it a nice curve. It should be fairly, well, it should be fairly straight actually on that section, shouldn't it? That's why I chose it just there. Just close it up with your fingers. Where's my press cloth gone? Here it is. Holding it flat with my fingers, and let's give that little press. Got a lovely little rounded corner there. Almost just needs to go in just slightly more, just so those edges are sitting on top of each other properly. A little bit more manipulation. There we've got a lovely pocket. You might find you prefer one side to the other. That's quite normal. If they're both the same fabric either side, then that's fine. Just roll your seams out so you've got them out to the edge, so you've got the full extent of the pocket out. Sometimes they get a little bit caught inside each other. You can slip stitch that closed if you wanted to, but when we sew it onto the actual dress, then we're going to catch that down anyway. Just try and get it as neat as you can do. Now that we've got that in place, we can undo our tacking stitches. So we've got a little stitch here, haven't we? Just pull out those threads. And we've got the stitches off the top as well. We can just pull those out too. And the ones on the other side. Just neaten up those edges. Just be careful not to catch your threads of your actual fabric for your dress. Okay, so both pockets will be attached in the same way. I'm going to put mine, so if that's my centre leaf, I'm going to pop mine just above this other leaf here, not too far out. Need to leave enough room for the centre so that we can do the actual place for the waist there. So that's where mine's going to go. And then what I do is I pin into from the centre out to the corners and then down to the bottom so that we can follow that edge. When I'm doing my second one, I will measure where this one is placed exactly in order to get them looking exactly the same. But I put the pins like this with the heads to the top because it'll be easier to sew that way. Just make sure that when you sew, you can see there's a little bit just here, just peeking out. I'll use my finger just to hold that inside so that we shut it closed with the row of stitches, but I don't want to see any on the other side. So let's go on to here. Going to start at one edge at the top here. I'm going to move my needle across to the left because then it'll be easier for me to see exactly where I am in that whole way just there. And I've got some threads on my back of my machine because I may need to help this bit of stitching through. So let's just take a couple of stitches forward. Take out the pin that's holding it in the corner now that we've got it anchored down. A couple of stitches back. Not liking it too much, and then I'm right on the edge, needle in the work, lift up my presser foot. I'm just going to tuck that little edge under that I was concerned about, just using my awl, which is a little pokey tool, and then I'm going to carry on stitching just right on the edge. Just go nice and slow, really slow on doing this. Stop for your pins when you get to them. Remember just to change your direction slightly. closest to the edge you can get, the better it'll look. I'll show you mine in a second. Just make sure your fabric's staying straight because it's trying to twist on me. That's it. Take out the pins that we've gone past that we don't need anymore, and we're almost up to that corner, so I'm going to take that pin off as well. Bring it up towards the top, and then I'm going to reverse. Needle out of the work. Let's leave our tail so that we can neaten that off neatly. So that's how my pocket is looking now. Hopefully you like that. I think it looks good. You can see it is a working pocket, so there you are able to put something inside it if you wanted to. And then from the other side, I will just use a needle to thread this, because I don't like it when you cut threads off and they're short, and then they can then appear a bit spiky and are visible from the front. So if by poking my stitches, my thread, back through to the other side like that, then I can tie this in a knot. Oops, when I can get the end of the thread. I'll do 3 on this. If I was doing this for a child or an adult, I would reinforce the top of the pockets, but being as we're just doing this for a doll, then I don't think there's any need to reinforce it too much. I think in the book Claire said you can actually slip stitch the pockets on if you wanted to, which is just doing it by hand. So you could always just lay your pockets on your dress and then stitch by hand should you wish. I think if you can get neat enough finish with your machine, you're close enough to the edge, then I think you should be able to get away with doing it that way as well. That's 2, and that's doing 1 more 3. Oops. And snip off those threads. So that's how it looks from the inside. And then that's how it looks from the outside. Now, if you're making the pockets for Elisha, you will then use some embroidery floss to go over the top and to do some extra stitches. And then also down the bottom here, you'll do some extra stitches as if it's been mended. And that's just the effect that the designer has put on it for Elisha, but it isn't on any of the other characters. So I'm just going to leave mine like that, so it just looks nice and neat together like that, and that should work quite well. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and add the other pocket on in a second in exactly the same place, so I'll just put it over the top of this one just here, and then that will give the 2 equal pockets. I do like symmetry, so that will be nice. So that concludes the section on the pockets. What I'll do next is the section on the patches, in order to how to put patches onto the clothing, just in case that's of interest to you. And then you'll be able to follow again with the rest of the construction, because all the construction from that point on will be the same to finish the dress, regardless of whatever view of or version of the dress that you want. And what I did think is towards the end, I'll talk to you about how to change the dress up to make it more as to how you might want it as well, if you wanted to form a design yourself. Okay, let me just go and put the other pocket on, and then I'll come back to you. Okay, so let's say that we wanted to make some patches. Just pretend that this is our skirt fabric here, this piece of corduroy just here. And let's just pretend we want to put a couple of patches onto here. We'd again work with the skirt whilst it's flat. We wouldn't work with it after it's got the gathers, because it's much more difficult then for it all to lay flat. But if you just get your scissors and you cut out a patch slightly bigger than what you want to apply. Choose the end here, shall we? Let's say that size. What you can do then is, if you use your quick and pick, is you can then loosen off some fibres at the edge. And you're better off if you just do a 1 or 2 at a time, because they don't come away all that easily if you try and do lots at a time. So this is going to give you that frayed edge look. And again, if you wanted the frayed edge look on the bottom of the skirt, like Elisha has got, then you would again use this technique just to loosen off some of those threads on the bottom. Be a little bit more difficult because it's such a long piece of fabric. Once you've got your frayed edge on one side, just change over to the other. And then we can always neaten up these edges if we wanted to in the future, once we've got our fraying sorted. Now this fabric that I'm working with is very easy to fray because it's what's called a loose weave. So it frays like crazy anyway, which is what's happening to my skirt. But if you're using a quilting cotton, you may only be able to take one thread out at a time because it's a little more tightly woven and it's designed not to fray so easily. Let's do this side now. Then that's the side we ripped, and it's a little bit rougher, but I'll show you how to tidy that up in a minute. So again, we're just taking off some of those fibres on the edge just to give it a nice frayed look. Okay, so on this side here, I'm just going to take off those bits where I ripped the threads, and that will just have it looking similar to the others. Again, it depends how frayed a look you want to go for. You can have more of a frayed edge, but that'll be enough just to show you for now. You're then going to go to your fabric and pop your patch on your fabric wherever you want it to be. And then I would personally put the pin heads into the centre of your piece, and I'd just put a pin out towards each corner. Now you can, if you wanted to give it a really handmade look, is you could just use a running stitch around the outside of this patch, and that would obviously be in keeping with Elisha's tattered and torn clothing. I think she's from a poorer part of town. But if you wanted to machine sew it, if your hand sewing isn't possible for you, then I would again move my needle across to the left. I'd probably start in one corner, take out the pin corresponding to that corner. I'd hold on to my threads and I'll just start stitching. Just when you get to the edge, just put your needle in your work and just wait for the corner of the edge, take the pin out, and then leaving the needle in the work, let's lift up the presser foot and spin our piece of fabric across, and then go down to another section. Let's take that pin out. Let's pivot again and go over to another section. So it really is just as easy as this to get that tattered look. Then ideally your stitches will be joined up or thereabouts. Oops, my machine keeps clicking. What you can do then is you can then just pull your threads through to the back like we've done before. Give it a quick unpick, I'll use this instead. So pull on one thread, get your loop. Or you can see it nice and clearly, look there. Look, there's how you get your little loop. Can you see it just there? So there's a loop one side, so pull on that one. Let's get to the other stitch. There's the other stitch. There's the loop for the other one. Oh, could do with my glasses on really. And then once we've got those, we can then just tie those in a knot. I'll do a double knot at least. Okay, so that's got one patch on. Then if you wanted to layer your patches, all you would do is cut out your next patch piece. Not got the right scissors really, am I, for cutting it out? And then you would again use your needle just to loosen off those threads off the edge. This is a quilting cotton this time, so you'll see it won't go off quite so easily. You'll remove those threads on the edges again like we did before to give that fabric a frayed look. If your fabric is printed over, you might find those threads don't want to come out quite as neatly. It'll just depend on whether your pattern is woven in or how firmly printed the pattern is. You can tell when you've not cut straight of grain as well with you when you're doing your patches. You've done straight of grain with your fibres going north to south and east to west, then you'll find it much easier to get those threads out. Let's do a few more on this side, and then again on this side. See, it just sort of stops you if you try to do too many in one go. Just pull that out to loosen that off. Okay, so there we've got a nice patch. Let's put that one in the middle. I think Claire's got some of hers slightly off-centered like that. And then again, you can change your thread colour, or you can use the same colour that you've got already. Perhaps just put a pin in just to hold it in place for you. And back to the sewing machine, or by hand. Oops. Take the pin out, do a pivot, and then again we can just neaten up those threads, and there you've got your patch. Excuse all of the fibres, I was just showing you just relatively quickly how to do that layered patch design such as Claire has got here for Elisha. So that's not dissimilar in terms of application for that, in a very similar way. Okay, so that's the three things. So that's the appliqué, the pockets and the patches. So now I'm going to put a note on the screen to say that everybody can join back in again. I'm just going to tidy up my workspace slightly, and then we'll carry on with the construction of this dress.